Alright, so this would be attempt either 4 or 5 at recording my Prezi using Camtasia Recording Studio. And almost immediately I'm getting another warning message talking about how some visual elements are being automatically turned off. So I recommend that if you're going to use Camtasia, you do not use arrow themes as set up on Windows 7 because it does not seem to be able to handle it. Okay, so today for EDU 6939 Internet and Education, my online presentation is going to be about Islam. Normally this lecture and activities go about 50 minutes. I'm just going to give you the run through because I know we don't all have the time of day to be sitting through a lecture on Islam, though I'm sure we could all probably use a little bit more information on the religion. Okay, so let's get started. Now, Islam, the word itself, is from the Arabic and means submission to the will of God. So the religion itself is submitting to the will of God. So the very name of the religion means to submit to the will of God. The term Muslim that we use to describe people who follow the practice of Islam is one who has submitted to this will, to the will of God. So the entire religion is dedicated to following what they believe has been passed on from their God to them and following those rules.
Islam is a religion practiced by more than 1 billion people worldwide. The word Islam means submission to God in Arabic. A person who practices Islam is called a Muslim, which means one who submits. It's the second largest religion after Christianity and the fastest growing religion in the world. About 4 million Muslims live in the United States. Islam got its start 1400 years ago with one man, the Prophet Muhammad. In the year 610, Muhammad ibn Abdullah was a 40-year-old merchant in the ancient city of Mecca, in what is today Saudi Arabia. Muhammad had a divine revelation that he was one in the great line of prophets, stretching back from Jesus to Abraham. Allah, which is the Arabic name for God, told Muhammad that he must spread God's word to all humanity. Muhammad based his sermons on his divine revelations. As he preached around Mecca, he spoke out against corruption in society and how the rich were neglecting the poor. Threatened by his teachings, the powers that be in Mecca forced Muhammad into exile in 622. For the next decade, Muhammad continued preaching in the city of Medina and amassed thousands of followers. When he marched on Mecca in 630, the city fell without a fight, and Mecca has been the spiritual home of Islam ever since.
Alright, so there's a little background information from a Discovery Education video on a little bit of the history of the foundation of Islam. Now, when Muhammad went up into that cave and came back claiming that he had been visited by an angel that had revealed God's will to him, he went up for several more visitations and would receive many throughout his life, and these were all recorded into what is known as the Quran. Now, those of you from a Judeo-Christian background, you might have recognized the name of the angel Gabriel. That is the angel who, according to the Bible, came to visit Mary to tell her that she was bearing the Son of God. Now, many believe that the Quran was written by Muhammad, but actually that's factually incorrect. Muhammad himself was not a literate man, though he was a fairly successful businessman in Mecca. So he actually dictated this to an aide who recorded these down into the Quran. Now, laid out in the Quran were what are known as the 5 pillars of Islam. So this is the point in the lesson in which the student would take out a sheet of paper, and the way I set up my room is there are two desks together, kind of like study buddies. That's what they used to call them in middle school. And they would take out their textbook, which is there on the desk, and they would, using the index or the table of contents, look up the 5 pillars of Islam, name them, and define them. So I'd walk around the room and help them with that. And then after several minutes, when the students have gotten this, I would show them the 5 different pillars, which are Shahada, Salat, Zakat, Swam, and Jah. And we talk about those. The first one is belief. There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his messenger. This is the central belief of Islam. They are a monotheistic religion, so here we harken back to our lessons on polytheism when we talked about the ancient Greeks and the Romans, Sumerians. And Muhammad is his messenger. So this is where we start to set apart Islam from the other Semitic religions of Judaism and Christianity. In Judaism, they're still waiting, of course, on the prophet to come back. Christianity believes that Jesus, as the Son of God, was this great prophet. And in Islam, we discuss how, while the Muslims believe that Jesus was a great and holy prophet, he was not the end-all, be-all of God's message to humanity. Prayer is the second of the 5 pillars of Islam, and this is the pillar that dictates that all Muslims must pray 5 times a day. Normally I would show footage from Robin Hood, Prince of Thieves, which was one of my favorite movies growing up, in which the Moore character takes out his prayer mat after he and Robin of Locksley have arrived back in England and begins to pray. And Robin asks him what he is doing, and he explains. Now, usually at this point, the students get a little riled up and say, "Oh, well, why does everybody have to stop? Why does everybody have to pray?" At which point, I read them a passage from, I think it's a saint or a priest or somebody. I'd have to look that back up. But it says that the just man prays 7 times daily, and that's actually taken from the Catholic Church. So, if people started to live according to their Catholic faith, and some of the other Christian faiths that adhere to this as well, they would actually be praying 7 times a day. So when they start to say, "Oh man, I would never want to be able to do that," well, there you go. The third pillar is charity, tithings to the poor. In some of the countries which live under Sharia law, which I have explained to them by the time that we start this lesson, and that actually live or base their governments on the 5 pillars of Islam, charity or tithings are taken directly from their income. 5 to 10%, depending on where you live, are taken directly from your income and given directly to the poor. Which is very nice in theory. Very nice to be sharing. Fasting. In the month of Ramadan, Muslims refrain from eating and drinking during the daylight hours. My wife had a friend when she was interning at a dentist's office. Her friend was one of the dentists working there, who was a Muslim woman, and would bring in pictures of her and her family feasting at Ramadan. I have yet to experience one of these feasts for myself. I would very much like to. I'm usually a yearly staple at the Seder dinner, celebrated around Passover in the Jewish year. I would very much like to experience Ramadan for myself and be able to show my students pictures and give them a better understanding of the practice. So if you know anybody, let me know. And then pilgrimage. Pilgrimage states that all able Muslims should take a trip to Mecca at least one time in their life. Famously, the basketball player Kareem Abdul-Jabbar took one of these pilgrimages to Mecca That was a very famous incident. And we talk about how what constitutes able-bodied. Um, doesn't necessarily mean, oh, he's able-bodied because he can walk, but people who are financially, physically able to leave their countries and fly all the way across the world are highly encouraged to do so. And then here's a little review.
Muslims, the followers of Islam, believe in a single, all-powerful God, whom they call Allah, literally the strong, the mighty, or the powerful. They believe that Muhammad, the founder of Islam, was not a savior or a messiah. Rather, Muhammad was simply a man through whom God spoke and delivered the text of the holiest book in Islam, the Quran. Mohammedanism, as Islam is sometimes called, is an inaccurate term and offends the spirit of the religion, since Muslims do not worship Muhammad. They believe that Muhammad was the last in a line of prophets, which includes Jesus and Abraham, the father of Judaism. They do not believe in the divinity of any of these prophets. The central belief of Islam is that there is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet. The word Islam means submission to God's will. A Muslim is one who submits to that will, keeping God in mind at all times. The devout Muslim spends much time in contact with God through prayer, repeating, "There is no God but Allah, and Muhammad is his prophet," before each prayer. The belief that God is all-powerful and all-knowing creates a sense of community for Muslims that reaches beyond political and racial barriers, uniting Muslims throughout the world. Islam is a humane faith, as much concerned with a person's life on earth as in the hereafter. The Quran is similar to the Bible of the Christians and Jews in that it provides a code by which to live life on earth in order to assure a place in heaven. Like Judaism and Christianity, Islam teaches of a final judgment day when Allah will assign the souls of the dead to either heaven or hell, depending on their deeds in their earthly lives. It dictates that followers shall care for those less fortunate than themselves by giving alms to the poor. It forbids the lending of money for profit. It sets out rules governing family and business. The Quran provides guidance for every phase of a Muslim's life.
All right. From there, I would go on to elaborate more on the 5 pillars of Islam. Depending on the different level of the students, we would have extended and refining activities from there. And then the next morning, when they come in, they have a little pop quiz thing, just for completion credit, in which they have to label the five pillars of Islam. I just want to thank you all for sticking around and seeing me through this thing. I hope you all enjoyed the presentation. Again, if you wanted to do a presentation like this, you could use Prezi or PowerPoint and then use the Camtasia application, which can be downloaded off the internet, and you can get a free 30-day trial if you'd like. And you just can record whatever's going on your screen. So I hope you enjoyed, and I hope you are all having a wonderful weekend. Bye-bye.